Hey everyone, I'm your host David Hess, and welcome back to the Rising Above podcast, a podcast that shines light on incredible stories of resilience. We talk with local business owners, entrepreneurs, and people doing awesome things, sharing their journeys of rising above life's toughest moments. Expect honest conversations, big motivation, and tips to help you rise above your past obstacles. Today, we're sitting down with a retired gastroenterologist, a doctor who specialized in digestive health, and this episode kicks off a series where we'll tap into her expert advice on health and fitness topics. It's a big deal because her insights will guide us through many episodes to come. Now, unlike some of our guests, Coach Tony and I aren't doctors. So always check with your own doctor before trying anything you hear on this podcast. If you love the show, please like and subscribe and follow us on all socials. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, we're officially recording. How you doing today, Dr. Becky?
I'm doing great. David, yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks again for joining us on the Rising Above podcast. It's an honor to have you back, or not back. On I've listened to you before on the Two Brothers One Mic podcast.
I heard that was a pretty good podcast back in the day.
Definitely. Good one.
But I appreciate you joining us. If you can kind of give a little bit of history about yourself, maybe like where you're from, where you grew up, and then we'll get into some of your, I guess, professional, your career, your professional career.
Okay, yes. Well, my full name is Rebecca Natrajan, and I'm a retired gastroenterologist. I grew up in Pittsburgh and went to medical school in Philadelphia. Came from a family of a lot of medical practitioners. I then went from medical school to internship and residency in Philadelphia. Then did my gastroenterology training at the University of Arizona. I have a beautiful son, and I just love what I do currently, which we'll get into because I practiced traditional medicine for many years. But believe it or not, I retired in 2005 from traditional medicine and gastroenterology. And we can get into the reasons why. And my life is so fulfilled with what I'm doing now versus when I was in traditional medicine. And we'll talk about the reasons about that. But again, it's an honor to be here. I love to share with people, my background, why I went into gastroenterology, a little bit about growing up with a family that was medically oriented. So if you want me to touch upon that, I can do that as well.
Yeah, I would like to hear about that.
Okay. So a lot of people say, how did you end up going into medicine? And I grew up in a very a medically oriented family where everyone gravitated toward either pharmacy, being a doctor, being a vet, nursing. And my mom and dad were pharmacists. My mom was one of the first female pharmacists to graduate from the University of Pittsburgh. And that's where my mom and dad met. And I grew up in a pharmacy, like not in the physical part of the pharmacy, but I grew up in the apartment upstairs of the pharmacy. So if you could picture, this is going way back, like a smaller version of a Walgreens, and it was called Edwards Pharmacy. It was the local pharmacy. And when you walk into a Walgreens or a CVS or a Rite Aid, you have the sections with the shampoo and the skincare, and you've got all the over-the-counter products. You have diapers, you have gifts, you've got some bread, and you've got milk, and you've got a Hallmark section. That's exactly what my parents' pharmacy was. They were both pharmacists. They ran Edwards Pharmacy, but they had a big apartment upstairs of the pharmacy. So when you traverse through the pharmacy, you'd go up the back steps and there was our apartment. And so when I was little, my dad brought a step stool down to the register and taught me how to ring the register and count change. He put the step stool back in the pharmacy and I counted pills with him and mom. And a lot of my friends, when I was growing up in the pharmacy, are like, oh my, a lot of drugs in there, huh? A lot of drugs. I said, yeah, but the only thing I'm interested in taking is the Maybelline because my dad carried Maybelline makeup. So my girlfriends and I, when they'd stay over at the apartment in the pharmacy, we would sneak down the back steps and we'd steal Maybelline. We wouldn't steal anything else. And my dad would always, he'd know because the lipstick was missing and the eyeshadow was missing. And at least I wasn't into the pharmacy part of it stealing. But anyway, growing up in that environment, the rest of the extended family, they were also pharmacists, nurses, doctors. My grandpap was a pharmacist. All my aunts and uncles, cousins, now nieces and nephews, and then again, orthopedic surgeons, internists, veterinarians. So when I was growing up in that era, so I graduated high school in 82. My family said it's not, if you're going to go to college, of course you're going to college. I mean, that's just a given. But what are you doing after college? Like, you have to go for further education. So I knew something medical, and I initially thought I'd go into veterinarian medicine. But the first time I shadowed a vet as kind of like a day internship, a German Shepherd was operated on, and I passed out and hit the ground cold. So I'm like, well, veterinary medicine's not for me. So then what's so interesting is I shadowed a surgeon for like a month and saw the most amazing major surgeries and never passed out. So I had this thing that I couldn't handle the animals being operated on, but for people, I just had the stamina and said, I can do this, but I didn't want to go into surgery. I mean, it was just a very grueling, challenging field. Plus, I don't like wearing those hats. So when I did go to college, I did pre-med, of course, and then I got into University of Hahnemann, which was part of Drexel in Philadelphia, for my medical school training. And so you go to 4 years of med school, and at that time, you experienced different facets of medicine, and I knew that I wanted to subspecialize. I knew I wanted to be an internist so I could take care of the whole body, but then I knew I wanted to subspecialize. I wasn't exactly sure in what. So throughout your training, you dive into certain subspecialties. So while you're in medical school and then you're doing your internship and residency, you get to experience subspecialties like gastroenterology, endocrinology, infectious disease, cardiology, different types of surgery like orthopedics, general surgery, neurosurgery. And what's interesting, at least in my opinion, is that each subspecialty has like its own personality. Like, certain personalities gravitate toward pulmonary critical care, cardiology, or infectious disease, neurology, surgery, orthopedics. And when I did my gastroenterology rotation, they call it, and so I did 8 weeks with a group of gastroenterologists in Philadelphia, I was just amazed. It was a group of guys, no women in the field at that time, really rare. And these guys were fun. They were happy. They were always just joking and enjoying life, enjoying their patients, making their patients feel good, even though they had to put them through a colonoscopy or an upper endoscopy. And I thought, well, this is kind of my personality. It's lively, it's fun, but I'm really good with eye-hand coordination. So to do procedures like colonoscopies, upper endoscopies, you have to be good at that, because you're, using a scope that has a camera. You have to look at a TV screen, and you're basically cruising through either the large intestine or you're cruising down the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and you're visualizing, and you have to be good, and you have to be very methodical, very thorough, and very calm. And so everything kind of fit with my personality. But one of the biggest things in terms of why I, as a female, went into gastroenterology is that I used to go to the clinics with all the male gastroenterologists that I was training with. And the women in the clinics, the patients, would just gravitate toward me, of course. But what they would tell me was really interesting. They would say things like, I'm so glad you're here, because I really cannot talk to a male physician about my gas, my bloat, my distension, all these changes in bowel pattern, diarrhea, constipation. I have reflux. My digestive system's out of whack. I have blood in my stools. I just can't tell anybody that's a male physician. So women just gravitated toward me. And I thought to myself, how many women are actually in this profession? It was really rare at that time. And so when you finish, your medical school, and then I did a year of internship in internal medicine, 2 years of residency in internal medicine, and then you go to interview for your subspecialty. So I knew it was going to be gastroenterology. And so I interviewed all around the country. And when I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, I'll never forget the interview day. And this will tell you how male dominated the field was back when I was there. So there's a day where you're going to go to interview for gastroenterology fellowship. They call it a fellowship. So it's 2 to 3 years of a fellowship. And so I arrived for the interview day, and there's about 20 men And then there's me in this room, and we're waiting to meet the head of the gastroenterology department, Dr. Dick Sampliner. I'll never forget him. And so, Dr. Sampliner comes in, he introduces himself, and he introduces, who we're going to be interviewing with. He tells us about the University Arizona gastroenterology program and, how they're like one of the number one programs in the country. And he's just going on and on and on and on. And I'm really excited. And you can tell everyone's really excited. And then he closed out the introduction, and I was sitting up front, and he walked right over to me and he put his hand out. And so I shook his hand, and he looked right at me. He goes, "Thank you so much for bringing the sandwiches." Oh. "Thank you for bringing the sandwiches." I go, and I looked at him, and I turned all red, and I said, "I'm actually here to interview for the fellowship." And he looks at his clipboard, and he turns all red, and he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "It's okay." I really didn't get that in Philadelphia because half of my graduating class women and the other half men. But here out in Arizona for GI fellowship, I was the very first woman they had ever interviewed. There was only one other woman in the entire state that was practicing gastroenterology, and she was up in Phoenix. So as I interviewed that day for the gastroenterology fellowship, I met with all the heads of the different departments. And I said, "How many women have ever interviewed here?" And they're like, "None." I said, "How many women practice in Arizona as a gastroenterologist?" They're like, "One." I said, "You need me. You need me." And they actually did rank me number one, but I had the credentials. It wasn't just because they needed to fill a spot with a woman. It's just I had the credentials, but it was shocking that there was no female gastroenterologists. So very male dominated field. But as soon as I got into private practice, of course, I had one of the biggest practices in all of Arizona because I was only one of two in the whole state, and women would flock because it was easier for them to talk to me about their gastrointestinal ailments. And if you don't know a lot about what gastroenterologists do, I mean, we take care of the esophagus, the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectal, anal area. We take care of the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, the whole biliary system. And, I love gastroenterology, and I did practice till 2005. But it got to the point where I felt like I wasn't helping people the right way. And we can get into that more if you have an additional question right now. I will answer that, but whatever you'd like me to do.
Well, I'm curious, how many women are in that industry now?
I don't know the exact number, but you'd be surprised, a lot. And same goes with orthopedic surgery and cardiology and pulmonary. So right now, women are pretty even with men in most subspecialties, which is great to see. I mean, but because it's, gastroenterology was just felt to be like a man's profession, just like orthopedic surgeons. I mean, I never saw a female orthopedic surgeon when I was in training, but now you see them. And so you see cardiothoracic surgeons that are women and neurosurgeons that are women. So we've come a long way in that respect, but it was eye-opening to me. But I'm so glad I chose that field because I helped so many people, women and men. And like the women that were my patients, they would always drag the husbands in or the significant other. And they'd always have these big eyes like, "I don't know if I want her doing my colonoscopy." But, I had a great practice, but things started to change in medicine. That's what drove me to retirement in 2005.
So I'm going to have Tony ask the gut health question.
Sure.
To that time during your practice. But I guess one of the questions I have, what is one of the craziest things that you've seen? What is one of the craziest things that somebody came in and they needed help with?
I'm very nervous to hear the answer to this question.
I have to be careful. Okay, well, of course, I've seen every foreign body that needed to be extracted from the lower colon, but also foreign bodies that were swallowed. I had a young girl come in one time, and she did have some serious mental challenges, and she was swallowing everything on her desk. Like she was swallowing paper clips and staples, and she was swallowing pens and pencils. And so I had to, obviously sedate and try to get these things out of her stomach. You have to put like an outer tube, like down the esophagus. You have to go in with your endoscope and like a little snare, and you have to search out these foreign bodies. You have to gently pull them out. And hopefully you can do that so that you can prevent that patient from having surgery. But sometimes, surgery is the only way that you can help these individuals. And I had for a short period of time when I worked with a group before I went into my private practice, they had the prison contract. And literally, I'd go to the prison to see these GI emergencies, and you'd go through, one locked, bulletproof door, and then the guards are with you, and then you go through the next door, and the guards are with you, and your patient is handcuffed to the bed. And I had one gentleman that swallowed a bunch of razor blades.
Oh my
And
God.
so we didn't know that he had put tape on the end of the razor blades. All we knew is that he said he swallowed razor blades. And we did an x-ray, and they had already traversed through his small intestine. So he had major surgery. So there's nothing I could do endoscopically. But in terms of like other food impactions, I saw that a lot. So if people have a narrowing in their esophagus and they don't get that looked at, checked, they've had reflux for a long time, they get scarring sometimes, a stricture in their esophagus, and then they're out to dinner and they're eating and they're talking and they're laughing and they're eating, and then boom, like a piece of steak or food just gets impaled. It just gets completely stuck in the esophagus. So I'd have to go in. It was usually in the middle of the night where you have to go in and you have to sedate, you have to put that tube down, you go in with the other tube, and you have to pull this food impaction out or you gently push it into the stomach. And then probably one of the craziest impactions I saw is I had another patient who was eating a lot of sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and seeds and seeds and seeds and seeds, just eating seeds all the time. And they came in with a full-blown colon obstruction. So I went up with the scope. We had to do enemas, and then I had to go up through, the rectal region, through the sigmoid colon, and there in the descending colon, that's your left colon, there's this impaction that's hard as a rock, that's all seeds, because they were dehydrated and they were eating too many seeds. So again, I couldn't break it up. There was nothing I could do. And they had to have their left colon resected. So I saw a lot of food impactions. I saw the colonic impaction. I saw foreign bodies. I saw foreign bodies that were also in the colon that were vibrating. I saw that a lot. But, the main things that I saw was GI bleeding, like a lot of people coming in with ulcer disease that were vomiting blood or having black stools. And then I did a ton of colonoscopies for screening purposes to check for polyps, to check for cancer. And then, diverticulosis, diverticulitis, all kinds of, infections, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. So, I saw pretty much every facet of every disease that could affect your intestinal tract and your liver, your biliary system, and your pancreas. So it was a busy practice for sure. And even though I retired from traditional gastroenterology, I stay very current, but I stay very current with the approaches holistically and nutritionally to support your gut, because your gut is the key to your quality of life. It is the key to your systemic health. And as an educator, because I've always been an educator, I continue to educate to this day about the importance of our digestion and absorption and elimination, and something called the microbiome and its connection with our systemic health. So I just continue to educate, but I educate not emphasizing the power of pharmaceuticals, because when I grew up in a pharmacy, of course, I knew the names of all the drugs. So when I went to med school and I did a year of pharmacy and a year of pharmacology, I aced all of that because it was easy for me. And then everyone else, they just memorized it, the drug, the drug, the drug, the drug. Okay, so when you go into practice, it's all about the drug. What do? You write prescriptions all day. Here, have another script, have another script, have another prescription. And so you get good at it. Plus, when you're in med school, we were all broke in med school. We were all loans, grants, we were broke. But we ate at 5-star restaurants 3 times a week because the drug companies would take us out. It would be Glaxo or Pfizer or Merck Sharp and Dome, Johnson & Johnson, whoever was paying, we would go. The only caveat to that, as you had your 5-star meal, is you had to listen to a presentation about their latest, greatest drug. And then it got to the point when I got into private practice, then the pharmaceutical reps would come in daily, sometimes
I have a
2 or
question.
3 a day.
During when they were taking you out for these fancy dinners and whatnot, what were your thoughts? Were you skeptical during those meetings?
No, not at that time, because we were all starving med students, and we were either eating top ramen or we were going to Le Bec Fin to have a 5-course French meal and just listen to some jargon about their latest, greatest drug. Okay, so you're kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but you're trained in med school to understand the drug and the pharmacology of the drug and the generic name of the drugs and how to write prescriptions. But you were never taught the nutritional approaches. You weren't taught like a holistic approach. I think we had 2 days of nutrition training when I was in med school, and it hasn't changed much because I talk to kids that are in med school now, and they're like, nah, it's still all about the drug, but they're wiser now. A lot of the younger people going into medical careers are a lot more enlightened in terms of there's some options. It's not always about the drug. But when I got into private practice, to me, it was about the drug. So even though we were eating at these restaurants, I never gave it a second thought. I'm like, this food is great. Yeah, I'll write for your drug. I'll write your drug, whatever. But when you get into reality and you have patients coming in and you've prescribed them medications that gave them side effects, or it interacted with their other medications, or you made them worse, or they weren't, getting better and you had to add on another drug. And there were these algorithms basically for, let's say you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Well, first we start you with this drug. If that doesn't work, we're going to layer it with the second drug, and then we're going to layer it with the third drug, and then we're going to layer it with a fourth drug, and then a fifth drug. So all of a sudden, you're just this algorithm of drugs, and then there's side effects. I mean, one of the, I think it's the fourth leading cause of death in North America right now is drug side effects. So I started to recognize it really early on in my practice, where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just writing so many prescriptions, and there's so many drug reps coming into my office. And then they started to frustrate me. And then I was frustrated with myself, and my patients were frustrated. So that's when I started to self-educate on different approaches, holistic, nutritional. There are options. There are things to support your gut microbiome, which in turn supports all these different systems that I can get into if you'd like me to. But it was basically me just awakening myself, going, I don't think I'm doing a lot of good for people. So that was one of the main reasons I retired in 2005, because I didn't feel like I was helping a lot of people with chronic drugs. And I'll give you another example about the chronicity of prescriptions and how they're prescribed by even the pharmaceutical reps. I had a rep come in one day and he said, I know that you see a lot of women in your practice over the age of 50. I said, yes, because that's when we start to screen for colon cancer. He said, well, there's clinical data out there that once women hit 50, they need an antidepressant, whether they're depressed or not. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, their neurotransmitters start to get really out of whack. And therefore, you start them out to prevent any depression. You start them out to prevent this. And I go, for how long? We giving these drugs to these women? He goes, for life. We give them for life. I said, you can go out of my office and never come back. I mean, this is how they would prescribe things. You need to take this for life. I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I'm not anti-doctors, anti-hospital. There's a reason for certain drugs. There's a reason for when we have a traumatic situation that we need to be in a hospital. But the chronicity of pharmaceuticals has become ridiculous. And when I left medicine, traditional medicine, my adult patients were on average 7 to 10 prescriptions a day.
Whoa.
And, toxic. So they were toxic from drugs. And, our society in general, and this is my soapbox, we're a toxic society. We're a nutritionally bankrupt society. We're a society that's fallen apart. And then we just want to fuel our bodies with drugs to kind of feel better. It's just the wrong approach. So that's really why I retired. The insurance industry didn't help either, because insurance companies were also just killing us from reimbursements. They were taking more from, the patients, and then they were giving less to the medical professionals. So that was an issue too. But it was really the pharmaceutical industry that drove me to make a change.
Wow, that's insane. Sorry, I accidentally hit a button. Tony, what are your thoughts on this?
So the entire time Dr. Becky's talking, not only have her and I had these conversations, not only on podcasts where we've talked to each other, but just in general, talking to each other on the phone and just a how you doing conversation on a regular basis. So I know exactly where she's coming from when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, when it comes to the Food and Drug Administration, where it comes to the medical, the AMA, and the list goes on and on. And so I don't want to go down a rabbit hole where we literally can we can literally talk to Dr. Becky till, I don't know, for another 5 hours, and we can get all the information we need and move on. But we want to make this a series where we get the opportunity to have her on board on a regular basis, where we can specifically have a show where we talk about the FDA, then have a specific show where we talk about the pharmaceutical industry. And she gave, I think, great points like topics where she gave the heading for what another show can entail, Dave. So I want to keep that there as far as what irritates us when it comes to these entities and the direction they're going, and what is the good about them and what is the bad about them. And so if that makes any sense, what I'd want to do now is just get a little bit of an understanding of gut health and the importance that she touched on a little bit, and kind of veer away from what we really want to get into as time goes on, which is basically being sick and tired of the BS that we're handed on a regular basis when it comes to those agencies and what they've been doing. Does that make sense? Or
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I would love to touch on gut health in general. I mean, the whole adage of you are what you eat is brilliant because it's so true. And like I said, we're a very toxic society. We're a very nutritionally bankrupt society. So our gut suffers, and our gut is in charge of so many things. I mean, we're talking, digestion, assimilation, absorption of nutrients, and elimination of waste. So you have to have a healthy gut, healthy movement of the gut, healthy ability to digest and to absorb and eliminate, and the ability to support something called your microbiome. And I'm guessing pretty much everyone on this podcast has heard of the microbiome, or something called like the gut brain axis, AXIS. Microbiome is just trillions of organisms that live in your gut. It sounds so weird, but they're there. And they serve a purpose, a tremendous purpose. And I'll keep it real simple. And I would like to dive into more detail, next time we talk. But this microbiome is trillions of organisms. You either have a lot of good organisms or a lot of bad, and you want a lot of good. So when you have good microorganisms, they produce really good chemicals, neurotransmitters. They allow the gut to have integrity to prevent leaky gut. And the more good you have, the better you feel. If you swing the other direction with a bad microbiome and your gut health is really bad, that's when you start to see symptoms of the gas, the bloat, the distension, discomfort, the change in bowel pattern, just don't feel good, brain fog, getting sick all the time. You know why? Because the microbiome is tied to your brain. It's a super highway between the gut and the brain, and the brain and the gut. When I was training in medicine, it was the reverse. Like, let's say a woman came in with irritable bowel, the gas, bloat, distension, the discomfort, change of bowel pattern. Almost always at that time, during that training in the 90s, we would hear, well, that she's got some kind of issue up here. She's kind of nuts. That's why her gut's a mess. No, your gut, when your gut is off, your brain's off. When your gut is working properly, then you have clarity and focus, and you can multitask, and you sleep, and you have good energy. So this bidirectional highway is so important. I'm sure you've all heard of it, the gut-brain connection.
Well, let me ask you this. Based on what you've said so far, and you're just touching on, like I said, we could talk for hours about this stuff. And we will. But real simple here, I guess it's a hot seat question, a true or false. I believe we have 11 systems in our body. Am I right when I say that? I think it's 11 systems in our body.
Yeah.
And in those, if you look at those 11 systems, true or false, the digestive system is the most important one of all 11.
It is, in terms of the connectability to all of these systems. Now, of course, your heart, if your heart stops pumping, you're done. But in terms of the gut, it's connected directly to your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain, your skin, your liver, cardiovascular system, pulmonary, urinary, your joints. I mean, every system you have in your body is directly connected to what's going on in your gut. What's going on with that microbiome? Is that healthy microbiome sending the right signals and the right neurotransmitters to your brain? Is it preventing inflammation because it's helping the integrity of your gut? And inflammation is the secret killer, linked to so many bad things. Plaque buildup in the cardiovascular system, metabolic syndrome, which is obesity, visceral fat, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high lipids in the blood. So if you have this great healthy microbiome and you're fueling it with the right nutrition and good hydration and avoiding as many toxins as you can, and you're giving it prebiotics and probiotics and even postbiotics, then guess what? 85% of that immune system that sits in your gut perks up. It's flu season right now. Everyone's coughing, sniveling. They don't feel well. I don't know. I sail through every season without a problem because my immune system is strong because I support my gut. And my endocrine system is so strong because I support my gut. My brain chemistry is good because I support my gut. But more and more data and research out there is linking the gut to a very healthy cardiovascular system if your microbiome is healthy. And decreasing the chance of chronic inflammation. And that chronic inflammation also linked to all these neurodegenerative diseases, these different types of dementia, different types of movement disorders. And so there's all types of chronic inflammatory conditions that can arise because your gut's not right. So when we talk about, is gut health important? It is the ultimate importance. And people notice a difference because I train thousands and thousands and thousands of people every year on how to take care of their gut. And when they do it the right way, then they start to feel better on all avenues. And everyone's like, it's a miracle. I'm like, no, it's not a miracle. Your body's a miracle. We were given this miraculous body. But if it's a toxic, clogged, nutritionally bankrupt body, your body's not acting as the miracle it's supposed to be. But when you fix the problem and you do the right things by your gut, then your body becomes the miracle. And so I just love when people are like, it's miraculous. I'm like, no, it's not.
Well, you know what, real quick, David, what one of the biggest problems are, and this is just from my own experience and what I see as a professional trainer when I'm talking to people about an eating regimen, and some, when we talk about our macronutrients, when we talk about carbohydrates, when we talk about protein, we talk about fats, and I'm talking to them, and the biggest problem that I see and have seen for the past 22 years is this. There's one word, and it's patience. People want this to happen overnight. They think that fixing the problem should be overnight. But what they don't understand, Dr. Becky, and maybe you can elaborate on this, what I'm going to say here, the problem didn't happen overnight. It took years and years of neglect and improper nutrition. And you could throw physical activity in there as well to put yourself in the situation you're in that has caused such a problem with your metabolic health, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I think about my patient base and all of the chronic diseases that walked in. They had type 2 diabetes for years, obesity for years, high cholesterol forever. These things didn't happen overnight. They were a culmination of, again, being toxic, not taking care of your gut, nutritionally bankrupt. And so the body starts to deteriorate, and then it continues to deteriorate. And it's, my patient base, I saw young people, but I saw a lot of people over 50, and not that that's old, but usually around in the 50s, I would hear the same thing. I was doing great. And then all of a sudden, everything started to fall apart. Now I've got issues with my heart. I've got issues with my sugar. I'm in a brain fog. I have no energy. I'm gaining weight no matter what I do. I starve myself all day. I still gain weight. And so, yes, they're looking for that instant gratification with whatever you're recommending that's different than a drug. And, and back to like drugs, we now have this whole line of these injectables to help you lose weight. Oh my, don't even get me on that one yet. But let's say you recommend like a new dietary program. Tony, you recommend the proper workout, the proper eating habits. And people are like, oh my God, in 1 week, everything should be fixed. No, it's going to take months to regain your cells, to create healthy cells, to create a healthy microbiome. And it's called being persistent with your program, being consistent with your program, and being serious about your program. Because you're serious about, you'll never skip your drug. I can't forget my drugs. I got to set my timer. I've got to have my little pill box. I got to make sure breakfast, lunch, and dinner I'm taking my drugs. And then all of a sudden you offer them this holistic nutritional workout approach, and they think that they could go to the gym for a week and eat healthy for a week, and all of a sudden everything's fine. It's just really somewhat crazy. So what I teach people is the attributes of success, not only in life and in business, but in health, is consistency and persistency, and you stay with the program and you allow your body to transform and heal over time. Because like you said, you didn't get there overnight. It's going to take some time. But once you start to see initial results and you start to feel better, you don't want to go back to feeling crappy again. You're going to start eating healthier, because I always say, like, the healthy body is going to crave healthy things. Unhealthy body craves unhealthy things. When your body starts to get healthy and you have energy and you have focus and you're drinking more water and you have the energy to work out more, you want to do more of that. You don't reach for the chips. You don't have that extra cup of coffee. You skip the sodas. You start to read labels. Read labels, people. You go to the grocery store. Your first stop should be the produce section. I'm just telling you, shop there first. Then if you have to buy something packaged, read labels, because if you don't understand the name on that label or the word on that label, that's not for you. It's a toxin. And so we need to not expect quote unquote miracles overnight. Body's a miracle. It will get there if you do the right things by it, and you have to stay with your program. That's the hardest thing for people. They can, take their drugs on time every day, but you give them an alternative that's a healthy alternative, and it's like pulling teeth. And, I've had to bang my head against the wall many times with many people that were so sick, and then they become addicted to their illness. So there's a lot of people out there that have secondary gain. Woe is me. I have 5 doctor's appointments. Oh my God, could you believe it? They want to do this. I have another procedure. I have another medication. Oh my God, I just feel horrible. And they just live in this disease state. It becomes them. And that's sad, because I'm here to break the mold.
I told you this before in I guess you can call it a private conversation, because we weren't on a podcast. Some people get so used to their misery that it becomes what's the word I'm looking for here? They become okay with it. It's something that they're used to, and they're actually afraid for something good to happen, because it's the norm. The norm is not to feel healthy. And so they kind of get into a routine where feeling unhealthy is a comfort zone for them. And I always found that to be so sad in so many ways, but for sure.
Well, so many people they identify themselves with the disease. As soon as you meet somebody that's got a chronic illness that they own, and the first couple sentences, they'll tell you, oh, I've had this arthritic condition forever. Oh, my fibromyalgia is always acting up. I have so many medications I have to take, and it's hard to even function. And oh, wow. I mean, the more you put that energy out there, and the more you own the disease, and the disease owns you, then the worse you become. You just become this entity. Yeah. And I don't know why people like to live that way. It just doesn't make sense.
I have a question. So if you are one of those people, the people that are on medication, the people that are just kind of stuck in it, how would you find a way to get out of that? What would be the best way for that person to take? What would be the first step, I guess, they could do?
Well, people are always researching things, whether it's, social media, internet, reading, reaching out to friends. I mean, there's so many avenues where you can start to just look at options, like healthy options to lose weight, healthy options to support your microbiome, support your brain health, nutritional approaches, workout approaches. I mean, there's so much that you can just do on your own. A lot of people search out that if they want to get better, they'll search out maybe not a traditional physician or traditional medicine person. They'll go to more of a holistic doctor or a holistic practitioner. They'll look a little bit outside of the box. A lot of people will find healing in their faith. And to me, health is a multifactorial approach. So if you're looking to get healthy and not have to stick in the rut of all these doctor's appointments and all these procedures and all these drugs, then look to some science that's out there. Go see a personal trainer, go see a holistic healer, go see a nutritionist, go to church, or, get into your faith. Talk to people around you that are upbeat and lively and healthy and happy. What are you doing? I mean, it's just gathering information, and what you do with that information, that's totally up to you. It's your body. You only get one of these. You have to do right by it, in my opinion. So search out some answers, and then gravitate towards something that fits with you. Don't do something so dramatic, like, going to join the army. and like work out every day so I pass out. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. You just search out really good information and you stick with it. And it is as easy as starting at the produce section when you grocery shop. And a lot of it to me is common sense, but a lot of people, they just don't have the knowledge to even start at the produce section. They just go straight for the Lunchables, or they go straight for the canned goods and things that are basically dead in terms of food. So there's a lot of avenues where people can find this information. Now, unfortunately, you know, mainstream media, and that's why I don't watch the news hardly at all, because every time I do, I usually throw something at the TV, like a sock, because of another prescription commercial. So mainstream media is still pounding us with the drug. I mean, you know this. You put on, you know, I like to watch Seinfeld, and you know, I'm big into comedy. So when I put on my comedy, I still have to go through a commercial if it's not recorded, and there's always like 2 or 3 drug commercials, and I'm like, why? Why is that? There should be, we should be talking about fruits and vegetables. We should be talking about prebiotics and probiotics, and we should be talking about exercise and hydration, and why aspartame is bad for you, and you know why, you know, our skincare products are poisonous. I mean, it's not just what we're ingesting, it's what we're putting on our skin, it's what we're breathing. And, you know, we can't get away from a lot of toxicity in the environment. It is what it is. But in terms of what you put inside and what put on your skin, or even use around your home, you can go green. You can do certified organic products. You can start to treat your body, the temple that it's meant to be, the miracle it's meant to be. So I think searching out proper information and then sticking with the appropriate program it's there for everybody.
I have another question. Are there cultures, or I wouldn't say civilizations, but other cultures that do it the best?
Yes.
Or is
yes.
the majority of the gut microbiome and its negative impact on society mainly an American issue?
Well, you know, it's more, okay, there's, you know, absolutely certain zones in the world that people live into their 100s without any significant chronic disease because they eat off the land. It's organic. They fish in waters that are fresh. They eat, you know, certain seaweeds, certain herbs, certain things from the ground that fortify the body and help the body to detoxify. So here's the thing. The whole globe is toxic with, you know, pollution, water issues, but we have the ability, our body has the ability to detoxify, and our liver is the main detoxifying organ of our body. So if you're supporting the liver, you have the ability to detoxify. You have the ability to fight off free radicals that cause something called oxidative stress, which can lead to something called dysplasia, which can lead to cancer, blah, blah, blah. Toxins can lead to cancer. Toxins can lead to the body being clogged. So it's not really just a North American thing. We're starting to see more and more issues of chronic illnesses because of our foods, you know, the Western culture invading these other cultures with processed food, nutritionally bankrupt food, foods with toxins and pesticides, insecticides, hormones, antibiotics, steroids, all that garbage, and more drugs are invading other cultures. But there are these certain blue zones throughout the world where there are people that live pure, and guess what? They live into their hundreds, and they don't have dementia, they don't have diabetes, high cholesterol, heart attacks, arthritic conditions, lupus, fibromyalgia. They don't have any of that. Gut's healthy. They eat, they go to the bathroom. And here's another thing I'll just throw in there since I'm a gastroenterologist. When you eat, you're supposed to stimulate something called the gastrocolic reflex. You eat, you should feel some you know, movement going on. You should go to the bathroom. That's normal. It's called gastrocolic reflex. So these cultures that eat off the land and fish in fresh waters, they eat and they go to the bathroom because their gut is healthy. Their microbiome is superior. And so all of their systemic health is superior. So it's not just us. We are invading other cultures, but there are still some that separate themselves and they want to stay healthy. And you know what? We need to take note of that.
What cultures are they?
Well, there's a lot, like some Polynesian areas, some areas in the Philippines, Hawaiian islands. So usually more like islandy areas that they just have these subsets that they just create their own environment, if you will. And that leads to longevity. It leads to quality of systemic health. It leads to clarity into their hundreds. And so, I mean, you can look them up. You can Google all the different, you know, quote unquote culture societies out there, these zones that exist, but they certainly don't exist here in North America, as far as I know. At least I've not been privy to them.
No, I can guarantee you that they don't exist in North America. And David, I say this all the time. I am not a doctor. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, but I can tell you for sure that, now when I say I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, that's Gen X. That's Gen X all the way. There's a lot of people trying to figure out why in the world does that have anything to do with this show. That's a joke, and you guys are going to have to look that up. But I could just tell you, just based on watching what's going on around me, no matter where I go in these United States, this is by far one of the worst when it comes to our health overall. Our metabolic health is definitely at the bottom of the barrel. And that's not me making fun of us. That's me concerned about us, for sure, 100%.
Oh, you look around. I'm a study of people, and wherever I go, I'm looking to look at people, how they're interacting. Are they smiling? Are they engaging in conversation? Or do they look just downtrodden? They just look like they just want to give up. They just look like they haven't slept, in forever. They just look horrible. And the obesity, that's the big thing too, is especially in North America. Wow, the people that are overweight and then obese and grossly morbidly obese, it's just escalating yearly and escalating with our kids, because our kids are growing up in this nutritionally bankrupt, toxic society, and they're eating garbage, and the parents aren't teaching them. They're not educating the kids about the appropriate things to put in their gut so that they can maintain systemic health. And, let me just touch upon obesity and carrying weight in the abdomen. I'm sure pretty much everyone knows this too. It's called visceral toxic fat. This is intra-abdominal fat. It sits around your organs. And this toxic fat wreaks havoc on your body. So it is linked to, like I said, the type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high lipids, cardiovascular disease. But when your body starts to clog with fat, this intra-abdominal visceral toxic fat, which has been clinically proven with cadaver studies dating back like 80, 90 years ago, where they were taking samples of fat from cadavers, and this intra-abdominal fat was tested for certain toxins, and it all had toxins. Like every toxin was in there, fire retardants to the pesticides and insecticides. It's just all the garbage was in the visceral fat. But the other thing is that you will get a fatty liver too. And so a fatty liver, then it impairs your ability to detoxify these toxins that are coming in every day, whether it's on your skin, you're breathing them, drinking them, eating them. So a clogged liver is no good for anybody. So you can get a clogged fatty liver from alcohol ingestion, but you can get something called steatohepatitis, which is just fatty liver without alcohol use. And it will still be from toxic accumulation of fat in the liver. And a clogged liver will clog your thyroid. You won't have this communication that you need between the thyroid and the liver, the thyroid. So then your metabolism starts to shut down too. So with all this toxicity and this intra-abdominal fat and then a fatty liver and a sluggish thyroid, and then you're not fueling your gut, no wonder we're falling apart. No wonder everyone has so many subspecialists. I mean, let's go back decades ago when you took your kids to see the pediatrician, and then you had a family practitioner or maybe an internist. Now there's a subspecialist for everything, from, the infectious disease to every subset of endocrinology and every subset of gastroenterology. We now have neurogastroenterologists. We have cardiovascular, everything, like every subset of cardiovascular, every subset of pulmonary and critical care. So there's a subspecialist for everything. It's crazy. And the other problem with that is when you start to see all these different subspecialists, you're jumping from this doctor to this doctor to this doctor. This doctor's prescribing a drug, and then this one's prescribing a drug, and the other one's prescribing a drug. But there's no communication about, is there any interaction with all these different drugs? Usually the pharmacist may catch it. They usually do. They'll say, wow, okay, like these are going to interact because it comes up on their computer. But it's crazy because you have all these different doctors and all these subspecialists and all these different drugs, that no wonder we continue to get sicker. I mean, to me, it's just, I don't know. We need a paradigm shift. We need a paradigm shift that people start to care about their quality of life and what they're putting in their body and on their body and what they're using around their homes. And once we continue to educate, and that's all we can do, and we start to create a movement of people taking care of themselves and taking care of their bodies and going green, because that's what I do, is I've been going green for years, then we have a chance. We have a fighting chance against, our own environment, I guess.
So, David, go ahead.
Well, so there's a growing, I guess, following of for biohacking. What are your thoughts on biohacking?
Biohacking, be more specific.
Well, are you familiar with Gary Brecka and some of the things he talks about?
I'm not. What does he talk about?
Oh boy. I feel like that's a
I'll have to look him up.
whole different episode, but here, let me. I had some.
And while David's looking that up, when you talk about you're talking about people making this lifestyle change, is slowly but surely getting into a lifestyle of fitness, getting into a lifestyle of nutrition, proper supplementation. I don't want to say let's immediately go into Dr. Becky's entire routine, but if you had to tell them, just give them a little, just a little look into what you do.
Mhm.
What would be the first thing that Dr. Becky would recommend to somebody who doesn't really know where to start? What would be the first thing they should do when they wake up in the morning? Maybe we could start there.
Well, when I wake up in the morning, I do some deep breathing exercises, and then I go get a very large glass of ice water with lemon, sometimes some lime, and I drink that down. And then after my shower, I have an organic vegetarian shake, a protein shake. And within this shake, I do whole greens and whole reds that are also organic, giving me prebiotics so that I'm nourishing my microbiome as soon as I put this in. And then I do some other things in terms of digestive enzymes and probiotics, and I do those regularly with my meals. In the evening, I do something to help rid biofilm out of my intestinal tract to allow my microbiome to stay healthier and healthier. So I have a very, very specific routine. And I start the lemon water first thing cold, and lemon, because it is a liver flush and it helps the bile. So that's like absolutely paramount. And then, breakfast, you're breaking the fast. You want to put something good in. I've never been a coffee drinker. I do organic tea, but coffee's not my thing. Sodas have never been my thing. Water is my thing, but the shake is my thing. So that's my breakfast. That's how I break my fast. It's something organic, nutritious, supports my microbiome with prebiotics, and I've got the protein coming in with all kinds of vitamins and nutrients, adaptogens, antioxidants. So I'm supporting my cells, my body's ability to fuel the liver and to detoxify. And then I drink water throughout the day. I try to get as cold water as I can because I think that's good to promote fat burning too. Lemon to continue that liver and biliary flush. And then I supplement with enzymes. I supplement with high grade probiotics that need to be taken with meals. And if I miss them, I don't feel as good. I mean, I just know I'm digesting, I'm eliminating appropriately. I feel good. I feel extremely clear. I sleep very well, and my energy is usually off the charts every single day. Tony, I can share this with you. I don't work out nearly to the degree that I should, but I do certain things to move around when I'm, just at home or wherever I'm at. Sometimes at home I'll just do like a bunch of squats, in front of the TV, or I may go down to the gym and just ride the bike for a little bit, or do a little bit of cardio, do a little bit of a workout. But I'm not a fanatic when it comes to that. I'm more of a fanatic with, my nutritional program, and I tend never to deviate with that. I mean, once in a while I have it like a cheat day, but in terms of my nutrients and my supplements, I am very consistent and very persistent with that because I enjoy how I feel.
Yeah, well, I could tell you this: 20% of what you do is the working out part, and that's something we could discuss in the near future as far as the working out. But I'm a huge believer in it not needing to be, and this is another show, but another. It does not need to be 50 minutes to an hour a day, 7 days a week. If you can get movement patterns in 2 to 3 days a week for 20 minutes to a half an hour, you're doing a fantastic job. And if you can squat while watching Seinfeld, that's a fantastic job. If you can do what they call Asian squats, look that up, folks. That's something, David, we're going to talk about in the near future on this show. Something I started doing not that long ago that is fantastic for hip mobility. That is just another thing. Just push-ups, just something simple. But I'm a huge believer in movement and exercise. I think some people think it means that you have to be in the gym 2 hours a day. You do not. David, did you find that what you were looking for?
Well, so biohacking, I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about it, like with eating natural foods. Meditation is part of it, and self-reflection, things like that. But like cold plunging, sauna, things of that nature, grounding. Is there anything like that that you would specifically recommend that would be beneficial towards a good, like a having a positive influence on your gut health?
Well, again, any type of approach to support that microbiome, of course, and then you bring in like I guess they call it like the cold hack maybe, or the ice hack. And actually, there's some great physiology behind taking a cold shower or plunging into a cold pool and drinking cold fluids. I mean, that's it promotes fat burning, it promotes thermogenesis. That's one of the reasons I'll start my morning off with a big glass of ice cold water. I have not done the plunges, but one of my best friends in California built a big pool in her backyard that's a cold pool, and she's in there, and she started slow, but she goes in quite frequently and she loves it. She said her energy and her weight release has been even more potentiated with that. And she recently had a grandma that passed, but grandma was over 100 and she had practiced that since she was young. So there is something to be said about all these different quote unquote hacks. You have to do your research and due diligence to make sure you're not doing something crazy, because sometimes some things come down the pike on social media and you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And then you do the research, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so toxic. So you just have to be smart about your decisions. But I'm all about learning, and we're always learning, and there's always science going on, and there's a lot of physiology behind some of these hacks. But anything you can do to support that microbiome, to me, is paramount to you creating longevity and a true quality of health and having that energy. But you got to pass that knowledge down to your kids and the grandkids, because they're the ones that are really suffering. I mean, we kind of grew up in a toxic society, but they're in the midst of it, and it's horrible. So, education is really key there.
Hey, Tony, before we wrap this up, do you have any other questions that you would specifically like to talk about?
It's not so much questions. It's us talking directly to our audience now, whether they're just viewing it or they're listening. I want people to understand this. We are not anti-science. We are not anti-pharmaceuticals. We are not anti-doctors, folks. We're talking to one right now, and getting a ton of good information from her. I feel like this is a Netflix special that can branch. So if you ever, anybody who watched Cobra Kai, they could. I just got done watching it. It's all finished up now, and they can branch off in so many directions with all the characters. I feel like what Dr. Becky did today was give us all these different characters, David, where we could branch off with more episodes with her in so many different directions, which is exactly what I wanted today for our listeners and our viewers. I want people to understand that this is not an anti-show. It's exposing what the bad apples in those organizations are promoting. And that's what we want to make sure that we get out to our listeners and viewers today. I think Dr. Becky touched on so much, but only really touched the tip of the iceberg. And so that just leaves the door wide open for a ton more episodes down the road when it comes to Rise Above and Dr. Becky Natrajan, for sure.
So in the media, obviously the whole RFK thing, we have to talk about this because this kind of applies to what's going on. It's a hit topic right now. RFK obviously just got sworn in. People agree with him. People don't agree with him on a lot of things. What are your thoughts? Sorry, there's somebody at my door. What are somebody at my door? What are your thoughts specifically on? I'm sorry, not specifically. What are your thoughts, and what kind of things would you like him to change?
Well, I think he's got a strong opinion about a lot of things, especially, vaccines. I think that he's got some strong opinions regarding the pharmaceutical industry. I'd like to see him bring more education to the forefront that doesn't focus so much on, the drug. I'd like to see more education to the whole population, even global population, about what we can do to support our bodies more naturally, what we can do to support our kids and our grandkids. And I think that, obviously being sworn in, and he's got, the president right there, there's so much that they can do from an educational perspective. I would love to see them squash some of the garbage that goes on with the FDA and how they get these drugs passed. And I think that there needs to be more restrictions on that. When I was in practice, there were certain drugs that came out and they were the latest, greatest, and they were studied and the FDA approved them. And then 3 years later, after so many deaths, they had to pull it. And so there needs to be more regulation. All this stuff that's going on with these injectables for weight loss, we don't know the chronic side effects going forward, but we do know currently all the GI side effects that are happening with all these injectables. We have to kind of calm this down. I mean, there's too many commercials. There's too much media emphasis on vaccines and the drug and the money being made, the trillions of dollars made off of these poisons for the most part. Again, I'm not anti-drug, but I am anti, just the chronicity and the media just pushing it down our throats, the commercials. I think there's a lot that can be done to start to get that out of mainstream media and start teaching people the way you should be living naturally, healthy. And I think you'll start to see that with him. He's very outspoken. Some people agree, some people disagree. I don't really get into politics, but I do know that the FDA is not your friend. They are your dealer.
That's a good way to put it. I like
Yeah.
that. And then going forward with the podcast, what topic do you think, or what topic would you like to hear us talk about next, regarding having you on, and what would you like to focus on?
Well, we could go a little bit more in depth about certain nutrients that are prebiotics and what are probiotics, like the definitions, prebiotics, probiotics. Go through the microbiome 101 maybe again, and then what it links to systemically, all these different systems, and why. How come the adrenal glands can perk up if the microbiome is healthy? What is going on in the brain when your microbiome is healthy? So maybe we could dive into, I'll say microbiome 101, but maybe it'll be a little bit more information than just a 101 type of class. But I think we need to talk about nutrients and approaches, and why you stop at the produce section as soon as you walk into the grocery store, and what exactly do you want to buy there to support your gut. So we could maybe go a little bit more in depth with that if you would like, and we could talk a little bit about going green on a future segment. But wherever you'd like to take it, I'm game. I'm an educator, and I'm here to help people.
I love it. Tony, anything else?
No, I think that this was an extremely informative show today, and I am really looking forward to the future when it comes to working with Dr. Becky Natrajan and understanding gut health and all the different pathways leading to health with so many other things when it comes to our cardiovascular, endocrine system, our central nervous system, and every other system that we have in our body and how it ties together. And folks, please, if you are somebody who is lost in how your journey or where you want your journey to go, these are the kind of episodes you need to listen to. These are the kind of things you need to understand. And that's why we're here. We're here to help. So looking forward to that in the near future for sure.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much. What an honor to be on the show. And I look forward to our next meeting. And everyone stay healthy and support your microbiome, please.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Have a great day.
You too.